My first impressions for Finland were just how beautiful the country was, how green it was. Everything was so green. I'm from the western United States, and there were so many trees. I got there in the very beginning of August, so the days were also really long. I remember waking up in the middle of the night sometimes, and the sun would be up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And that was a huge shock to me. The other thing was how healthy, clean the food was. I wasn't extremely used to that. I ate healthy, but not as healthy as the Finns and Finnish culture normally eats. And then also the people were extremely kind and respectful, also really quiet and reserved and shy until you get to know them. But then once you get to know them, they're very friendly and outgoing. And they say when you make a friend with a Finn, you make a friend for life. And yeah, that was definitely true. People bike all the time. So many people bike everywhere. Here in the United States, you don't really bike unless you're a little kid or you're a biker. And there, people would bike to the grocery store, they would bike to work, they would bike all over the place. People both young and old, and as missionaries, we would bike all over. And so you would see people on their bikes through the forest or through the different paths or on the streets. And it was crazy to see how many people out biking there were, as well as not as many cars and public transit. Buses and trains were much bigger, and the train was so beautiful through the forest and always so quiet, which a lot of the trains I've been on in my life are really rickety and loud and kind of shaky. But the train there was fast and quiet and smooth, and it was nice. Despite being really quiet and reserved at times, they're a really strong community, and they're really friendly with one another. And the Finnish culture is like a culture of family, and Finnish blood runs deep, and they have a lot of pride in who they are and where they're from and where their family has come from, and the culture that they represent, the culture that they have, and they love to share that with people. And I loved just seeing that culture and the willingness to make us as people from the United States feel like we were part of that while I lived there. Well, the best Finnish food that's my favorite is lohikeito, which is salmon soup. It's normally salmon that's very fresh, potatoes, and then not necessarily a broth, but more like a creamy soup to go with it. And they had it, felt like more often in the winter, had it because it was a soup, but oftentimes we would have the salmon in the summer. Normally we would have probably smoked salmon in the summer, and members of our church would make that for us. That was fun. I also really loved the Fatser chocolate. Everyone does, Finn or non-Finn. We would love that. We'd normally get like 1 bar a week and eat that and continually forever. That was fun. I also really liked the cereal, muesli, chocolate cereal, and then just fresh produce. A lot of mansikka, strawberries, a lot of apples off of trees. That was always fun. As I said earlier, people would give us apples a lot, and then pears and bananas. A good Finnish summer food that they ate a lot is makkara, which is like a sausage, sort of like a sausage and a hot dog, but it's more of just a Finnish food. So you would eat that a lot, and people would cook that, especially on Juhannus, which is the summer solstice, which is a big holiday in Finland. Obviously, it's the longest day of the year, and in Finland, that means the sun's up pretty much all day and all night. And so they would cook a lot of makkara, and I love to eat that. And then bread. The bread was always healthy. A lot of fresh bread. Friends that we made or other people in the city would bring us bread, fresh bread, homemade bread. And yeah, love that. Also reindeer. Had reindeer a lot. Not a lot, but definitely a handful of times. That was good. We sometimes would go buy it on our own and try to make it, but we could never make it as good as the Finns would. But reindeer was really good. I enjoyed that. Well, the Finns are really passionate about their language. They love their language, and I felt like as a missionary, I loved their language. I tried to. I wasn't always great at it, or maybe you could say I never really became great at it, but I always tried my best, and they respected us a lot and admired that we tried, because a lot of people would go to Finland and they wouldn't learn the language and they wouldn't try, just because of how hard it is. Finnish, I mean, to my understanding, it doesn't really derive from a lot of other languages. It is what they call a postposition language, which means it uses a system of cases, both all in nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And then there's different gradations in words, meaning softening or hardening, depending on the vowel structure as well as the different consonant structure, and those postposition cases you're going to be adding on to that. And then, does a noun precede a verb? A lot of that will change the structure of the language and how the verbs are infinitive, or how you would conjugate that, depending on the different pronouns you would use, whether they were, singular or plural, and if they were for yourself or other people. But I love Finnish. One thing I really loved about the language was how descriptive you could be. As you start to get a handle on it, your words mean a lot in Finnish. And people in Finland, they would when they said something, they meant it. And maybe they would joke sometimes, and I think you would know that. But if they did say something to you like, I hope you have a good day, they sincerely meant it. I hope you have a good day. And that was really incredible in the culture, just because a lot of times, in other cultures, or maybe here in the United States, we throw that out, it's casual, it's more of just a greeting, like hello, and they said it there, like, I hope you're doing well, and I hope your family's well, and I appreciate you being here, and thank you. It came from the heart. And I think a lot of that is embedded in their culture, but maybe more of it is embedded in the language and the detail in the language and the specific parts of the language that Finns understand perfectly without maybe knowing they understand it perfectly. But when you study the grammar, not learning it as a native language, you can hear that there's different moving parts that they use to explain some of the true thoughts of their heart and feelings of their heart, and that's really fascinating. Finnish, there's a phrase that sometimes they would say in Finland to us, and people outside of Finland, maybe Swedish people that heard we were going to Finland, they would say there's only two types of people in the world that learn Finnish, and that's primarily, obviously, Finnish babies, and the second being missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ. And that was just about true. You didn't run into many people that spoke Finnish outside of the missionaries and then obviously the native Finnish people. Finns are known to speak really, I would say the word is probably quietly and softly, and so you have to learn to listen. Maybe there's a tie there between them truly meaning what they say and you having to actually listen. And so when they would speak softly, you would have to listen, and as you would get better at the language, you would have to speak differently than how you would speak English or a different language, just because they did speak softly and quietly. And I think a lot of people, even friends I've made here at college or friends in different parts of the world, you speak Finnish to them just as an example, and they'll say, wow, that's actually a really beautiful language. Even though it's completely foreign to them, they don't understand it, they can hear how smooth it is and how the agreement, I guess is the word, the agreement between different articles and different parts of the structure of the language. And it is beautiful. I really love Finnish. I still love to read in Finnish. There's some books that are hard to read just because the grammar can get quite complex and the vocabulary. There's a lot of vocabulary I didn't necessarily learn during my time there. But I thoroughly enjoyed Finnish, and I loved the challenge it presented, and loved the detail and description you could use. It meant stuff, and you could convey the thoughts of your heart almost clearer in Finnish.
Can you demonstrate just a simple greeting in Finnish?
Yeah, I could say terve. Minun nimeni on Nathan Tracy, ja minä olen Yhdysvalloista. Puhun suomea, koska mä asuin siellä 1,5 vuotta. Ja asuessani Suomessa minä opin todella paljon ihmisistä, jotka asuvat siellä. Opin, että heillä on paljon rakkautta sydämessäni ja rakastan Suomea ja rakastan suomen kieli ja toivottavasti voisin pitää kiinni suomen puhumisen taitoja elämäni kautta. Things that come to mind, just interesting parts of Finland, is how clean it is as well. I think Finns would like to hear that us from the United States, I remember thinking it was so clean here. Like the streets were clean and they just had such a such an organized trash system. There had to have been like 6 or 7, maybe 8 different things to put your trash in, whereas here in other parts of the world, as well as here in the United States, mostly we only have the recycle bin and the trash, whereas the Finns will have plastic and bottles and then plastic bags and then glass, and I found that to be fascinating. It kind of shows how much they love their country, how much they want to keep it clean and take care of it, and I think it's also great for the environment. There's probably a lot of that has to do with how green it is, how lush it is, and how pretty everything is. And I think the lakes were amazing as well. I would love to, when we would have lakes near where we were staying, we would bike past those and you would see, depending on what time of year it was, the sun setting on the lake or the moon reflecting off the lake. And then the trees surrounding the lake was beautiful. And like I said, it was always green, and the animals, the wildlife, we would oftentimes see from the train. We saw reindeer sometimes, or other animals. Saw moose once from the train, and then eagles, kotka. We would see those flying around, which was incredible. I also found something fascinating, that every city has a different twist to it, different spin, and some cities are bigger or smaller, and oftentimes I'd mean they're more quiet, but like Vasa, for example, spoke a lot of Swedish there, which was hard because I never really put in a lot of effort to learn Swedish just because Finnish was so much, but so many Swedish people and so many Finnish people made for a different culture. And I do remember Finland beat Sweden in not the national, but the World Championships for hockey. They beat Russia, and then they also beat the United States of America in hockey, and that was a crazy day. Finns were very excited. We were excited. We weren't as excited as the Finns, but we were extremely excited. We had a friend come over to our apartment and drop off a newspaper that just said like Suomi voitti on it, Finland won, and it showed them holding up the trophy or whatever it was. And they're so passionate about hockey, just as passionate as any fan can be about any sports team. They had that for the Finnish national hockey team. Yeah, it was making me miss it. Yeah, miss it a lot sometimes, but it was just incredible. People in Finland just have huge hearts, and they respect the people around them. It takes some time to get to know the Finnish culture, the Finnish people, but I truly found that they just care about people, and they love people, and they see when people do their best, and they respect that a lot. And that meant a lot to me because I was an 18-year-old kid in a country about as far away from home as I could have been, and it didn't take long till I started to realize that the people here were, they respected that I tried. They admired that I tried to learn their language, and that I did all I could to embrace the food. And there's some food that's so foreign, and maybe us from the United States don't always like their food, but we'd always try it and embrace it, and they admired that in us, and I admired just how big their hearts were, how much they loved us and accepted us into their culture. Crazy funny stories from my time in Finland. Lots of times we were running after the train, trying to make it to the train station on time, the juna-asema. Even though the trains are on such a good schedule and they're always on time, for some reason me and my kaveri, we call it a companion in English, we were always running behind trying to catch the train. And I remember one specific time, we called it transfers. I was going from one city to another. Actually, I was moving from Turku, and I was going to be going to Kokkola, more in the northwest part of the country, other than the southwest. And we were running from our train from Turku, and we had to run through the train station, down underground, under the tracks, up the stairs, and we were carrying like all of our suitcases, and we had a lot because we were living there a long time. I carried all my big suitcases and my carry-on, had a backpack, carried them all the way up this big staircase, and then our bikes as well, because that was how we got around. And somehow we barely made it on the train. Maybe they waited for us, maybe they didn't. But I just remember my arms like still hurt from trying to carry all my suitcases, and my kaveri, my companion, was trying to carry his as well. And we were stressed because we couldn't miss this train because trains aren't particularly cheap, and we had a schedule to keep. But I remember we made it. That was a crazy day. And I remember other days it being so cold that our bike would like the part of our bike, the spokes on our bike would freeze to the ground. You would go through sort of like a puddle that had cars going through it all the time, and then you would pull into it with your bike, and then it would be so cold that next thing you know it would freeze in the ice and it would freeze over your tire, and then you had to break it off, and that was normally a process. And yeah, just lots of fun stuff like that happening all the time, especially in the winter, falling on your bike in the snow, because we would bike every day. I don't know if there was a day in my mission that I didn't bike, sincerely. If there was only one or two. We biked every day, normally multiple kilometers, and always fun adventures, slipping in the snow, and normally there was a lot of snow though, so it didn't hurt. I remember going to different places. We have one day a week on the mission, we have what's called a preparation day, valmistautumispäivä, and that day we go shopping, do our laundry, clean our apartment, get ready for the week, but we'll normally have a few hours to go maybe explore the city or see some more tourist sites. And one day, one of the people we became friends with that we were getting to know better and teaching and sharing some messages with, he took us out ice fishing. This was in Vasa, actually, and we went out to Vasa and ice fishing. We weren't catching anything. It was obviously really windy because it was flat, and it was a tributary to the ocean, and we ended up catching like 3 fish in the last minute, last hour or so. We caught 2 or 3 ahven, which is a perch. They were only about that big, and then I got lucky somehow, and I ended up catching a hauki that was about like that big. It was quite a big hauki, which is a pike, a northern pike, and that was one of the funner valmistautumispäivä we had, because we normally don't go fishing every day, and I remember that as a great memory in Finland of just being with the Finnish people and doing things they enjoy to do and being part of their culture and actually catching fish, which was exciting. Yeah, I could certainly try to speak in my most American accent, and then maybe a better Finnish accent. Hopefully you can tell the difference. But an American accent would sound really hard. A lot of like an R or a T, a lot of those consonants would be very hard. So for example, like terve, that was how you would say hello in a very new American way. They would also mix up the A and A. So instead of saying like mitä, you would say mitä. So terve, mitä kuuluu, mitä te teet, mitä te teette tänään. It's hard. It's sort of second nature now. And then the R's, there's a weird place in Finnish where you can't roll your R's, and then you can roll your R's way too much. But they roll their R's just very softly in the front of their mouth. And so you could say no R's is, terve, and then you could say terve, which is too much, but maybe a more smoother Finnish dialect would be terve, smoother with the R, and then lower volume in the pitch of your voice. Terve, minun nimeni on Nathan. En puhu suomea, koska minä olen uusi täällä suomea ja en puhu suomea, mutta minä yritän puhua suomea enemmän.
And then saying like the same thing in like your best accent.
Yeah. Minun nimeni on Nathan ja toivottavasti mä voisin puhua suomea teidän kanssa ja te voitte ymmärtää minua. Olen asunut Suomessa 1,5 vuotta ja olen paljon harjoitellut puhumaan muiden kanssa, jotta voitte ymmärtää siitä, mitä minä haluan sanoa teille. Ja tiedän, että suomea on oikein vaikea kieli ja se vaatii paljon aikaa ja erityisesti suomalainen sisu oppimaan ja myöskin puhumaan suomea, mutta olen silloin tällöin mä voisin puhua siitä. Mä muistin, kun minä saavuin Suomeen, se oli 5.–6. päivää elokuuta. Ja muistan, että mä olin Helsingissä todella pimeä yhdessä. Ja muistin, että meillä oli lähetysjohtaja ja hänen vaimonsa ja he sanoivat monia asioita meille Suomesta ja sisusta. Puhuimme sisusta todella paljon ja sanoivat meille, että jos rakastamme suomalaisia ihmisiä, sitten he voivat rakastaa meitä. Ja se oli ihan totta. Ja rehellisesti joskus se oli vaikea. Se oli vaikea olla Suomessa, kun syntyin Yhdysvalloin ja ystäviä olivat täällä Yhdysvalloista ja perheeni oli täällä Yhdysvalloissa, mutta minä löysin minun koti Suomessa. Ja joskus minä tunsin siltä, että kun palasin takaisin Suomesta tähän Amerikan kotiin, joskus tunsin siltä, että minä lähtin kodistani. En palannut kotiin, mutta lähtin kodista. Ja olen todella kiitollinen ajasta, jotka minulla oli siellä. Kiitollinen teistä ja toivosta, jotka minä löysin teidän maasta ja erityisesti teidän uskonne. Me uskomme Kristukseen ja te uskotte Kristuksen myöskin. Ja se oli ihan vahva teidän uskonne ja olemme ihan samanlaisia. Että me rakastamme Jumalaa ja rakastamme hänen poikansa ja joulu ja pääsiäinen. Se oli todella iso asia siellä ja tunnen siltä, että minä menin Suomen opettamaan Kristuksesta ja Jumalasta ja rakkaudesta, mutta minä opin enemmän teiltä ja olen aina kiitollinen näistä kokemuksista, jotka minulla oli Suomesta ja toivottavasti jonakin päivänä mä voisin palata siihen ja me voidaan tavata uudelleen. Mutta, kiitos.